Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Zechariah, the 3rd chapter, just continuing from where we left off in the 2nd chapter, as Zechariah is still receiving this vision. Concerning different things to happen. A lot of it is put in a form of a dark saying. So the words are not, the sentences are not exact. There's a lot of symbolism in here, but nevertheless, they all have a meaning, all right, and a role to play in terms of this vision that Zechariah received. So continuing from the 2nd chapter, within the same vision, Zechariah now sees, right, as you can see in the subheading here, Joshua the high priest. Now, we've read about Joshua the high priest, right, along with Zerubbabel and the chief of the fathers and so on and so forth. But in here, for the first, couple of verses here, this is a vision that Zechariah sees concerning Joshua the high priest. Okay. So this is Zechariah chapter 3, verse 1. And he shewed me Joshua the high priest standing before the angel of the Lord, and Satan standing at his right hand to resist him. So in this vision, Zechariah now sees Joshua the high priest standing next to this angel, and then he also sees Satan. Now, when you look into that word, like we've gone into, like the meaning of the actual word Satan, you have here Shatan, which says to be or act as an adversary, resist or oppose. And when you actually look into the words here in the blue letter, you'll see that the Hebrew word for Satan, which is H7854, Shatan, it's very identical to the Hebrew word for resist, which is H7853, Shatan. And in this sense, it's used in the form of a act, okay, or I guess like a verb. And in the verse above, or at least in this part here, the word Shatan is used in the sense of a person, like an attribute, right? So when you look here, same word Shatan, it says adversary, one who withstands, right? And when you look at the word for resist, Shatan as well, to act or resist or oppose. Okay, so a lot of people tend to get tripped up whenever they see the word Satan, but it's important to also understand the meaning of words when you go into these things. Now, of course, in this vision, this is still what Zechariah saw. All right, so he saw this adversary, Satan, resisting Joshua. And in this case, as we're going to go into, what Satan was doing, at least what he was sent to do, was to negatively influence Joshua the high priest. All right, by resisting him, in essence, corrupting his mind, as we're going to read, for a period of time, that he wouldn't be in a right mind state. Right, basically, he would be committing iniquity. Now, verse 2, continuing. And the Lord said unto Satan, the Lord Yahweh rebuke thee, O Satan. Even the Lord Yahweh that hath chosen Jerusalem rebuke thee. Is not this a brand plucked out of the fire? So similar to how Yahweh Shai told Peter, right, the apostle Peter, that Satan has desired to sift him, right, as I think he said, as wheat or so is sifted. But the Lord told Peter that he had prayed for him, that his faith fails not. So there are certain individuals that the Heavenly Father has given, a special charge over, to where these demons and even Satan cannot have these individuals. They've already been given to Yahweh Shai, and those individuals are the elect. Okay. Nevertheless, these Satan and these demons still desire to try and sift these individuals, to try and resist them, okay, to pull them from the way of righteousness, but we know that that's not going to happen. So as Joshua is being referred to here as a brand plucked out of the fire, meaning that he was one of the chosen vessels. Okay, and a quick precept for that here in the book of Wisdom of Solomon, I'm just going to go straight to the point. Wisdom of Solomon chapter 3, the chosen of the Lord are likened onto gold that has been purified from the furnace, that has been proved. Okay, similar to how Joshua is being referred to as a brand plucked out of the fire, meaning that he's not destined to be destroyed, but rather to be delivered. So this is Wisdom of Solomon chapter 3, verse 5. And having been a little chastised, they shall be greatly rewarded, for God proved them and found them worthy for himself. See, there goes that word proved again. As gold in the furnace hath he tried them and received them as a burnt offering. Okay, so going back, and this them here that it's talking about is referring to the Lord's chosen, his elect. Okay, which Joshua the high priest is obviously one of them, as it is said here in the second verse, that he is a brand plucked out of the fire. Verse 3, now Joshua was clothed with filthy garments and stood before the angel. So, like we read about Satan resisting him, these filthy garments that Joshua was clothed with, though this is what Zechariah was seeing, the meaning of this was that Joshua for a period of time would be going in the wrong way. Okay, the filthy garments here would represent iniquity. All right, and I'm going to get a couple of precepts here to show that, you know, you have garments of righteousness, and then you have the opposite of that, where you have garments of iniquity. And being clothed with these things means that it's metaphorically saying that you are going in the way of this, right? You've now put on the mind of iniquity or wickedness versus putting on the mind of righteousness. So now let's get the book of Isaiah chapter 61, verse 10. And this is a precept to prove that sometimes when you read certain verses that refer to certain, like a garment being put on somebody or being clothed, but when the precept says somebody is clothed, but it doesn't describe the clothing as actual clothes, then you know that it's metaphorical. So this is Isaiah 61, verse 10. I will greatly rejoice in the Lord Yahweh. My soul shall be joyful in my God. For he hath clothed me with the garments of salvation. Now we know that salvation in itself is not a attire. It's not something you can clothe or put on your body physically. Salvation is being delivered ultimately when Yahushua comes back and saves our lives, right, from this destruction that's coming. That is salvation. That is not that's an event, right? That's not something you can physically put on the body of somebody else. So you understand here that when he talks about being clothed with the garments of salvation, it's speaking metaphorically. He hath covered me with the robe of righteousness, as a bridegroom decketh herself with ornaments, and as a bride adorneth herself with jewels. So just like a bridegroom, as it says here, and a bride will put on these attire and these jewels to make themselves look good, we would put on righteousness. Okay, which is really when you're clothed with righteousness, it means that your thoughts, all right, the way that you live is now after the ways of righteousness. So now let's also get a quick precept here in the book of Revelation chapter 19, verse 7. Let us be glad and rejoice and give honor to him, for the marriage of the Lamb is come, and the marriage of the Lamb is the joining of the elect. Okay, the men, women, and children that have been chosen to be delivered, that are Israelites, with the Lord Yahushua when he comes back. That is the marriage of the Lamb. Okay, the Lamb being the Messiah. So as we're reading here, it says, "For the marriage of the Lamb is come, and his wife," which represents the elect. It's just metaphorical here. It's not the Yahushua. It's not talking about Yahushua having a physical wife, but it's referring to the elect, the body of the believers here as that woman. It says, "And his wife hath made herself ready." Verse 8, "And to her was granted that she should be arrayed." When you're arrayed in something, you're clothed with it, right? So she should be arrayed in fine linen, which is clothing, clean and white, so pure. And then it tells you what the fine linen represents. "For the fine linen is the righteousness of saints, and the saints are Israelites," pursuant to the book of Psalms, chapter 50, verse 5. Okay, so in here, these are a couple of precepts to show you that the clothing, being clothed in this sense with righteousness, all right, or salvation, is to represent being, walking in the ways of righteousness, the things that please the Heavenly Father. And just as you can be clothed with those things, you could also be clothed with filthy garments, which would be the opposite of what we just read. And that was the case for Joshua here in the vision that Zechariah is seeing. Verse 4, "And he answered and spake unto those that stood before him, saying, Take away the filthy garments from him." So one of the angels said this in the vision that Zechariah is seeing. One of the angels commanded that they should take away the filthy garments from Joshua. And so the taking away of the filthy garments from Joshua would be the cleaning or the cleansing of his iniquity, right? Of going in the way of wickedness. The Lord would basically take that perverse spirit off of him and put him in a right mindset. Okay? To walk after the ways of righteousness again. "And unto him he said, Behold, I have caused thine iniquity to pass from thee." See, so the angel tells another angel here in this case to take away those garments from Joshua, and then tells Joshua, hey, look, see, the representation of me having those filthy garments taken away from you is me causing your iniquity to pass from you. So you've now been cleansed from that iniquity, and now you are back to being in a right state, in a righteous state of mind. See, and continuing, "And I will clothe thee with change of raiment." So I'm going to take away that wickedness from you, and I'm going to replace it with righteousness. Okay, like we read in Isaiah 61 and Revelation 19. Verse 5, "And I said," so now, seeing this, Zechariah says, let them set a fair mitre upon his head." So they set a fair mitre upon his head, and clothed him with garments, and the angel of the Lord stood by. Okay, so far what we've read is in this vision that Zechariah is seeing, Joshua the high priest being resisted by Satan would go off. He would be in a state of iniquity for a period of time, but at the end, ultimately, the Lord would have mercy upon him and cleanse him and cause that iniquity to pass away and clothe him with that righteousness. Verse 6, "And the angel of the Lord protested unto Joshua, saying," so he basically proclaimed unto Joshua, "Thus saith the Lord Yahweh of hosts, if thou wilt walk in my ways, and if thou wilt keep my charge," right, meaning my commandments, "then thou shalt also judge my house, and shalt also keep my courts, and I will give thee places to walk among these that stand by." So in other words, what the angel was telling Joshua was, if you set your heart right after me, and you walk after my ways, and you judge righteously, and you live according to my laws, statutes, and commandments, I will give you I will put you in a high position, a position where you can judge, over my people. You can keep my courts. It's just metaphorical for saying the same thing. right? And I will give thee places to walk among these that stand by, meaning that he would be placed in a in a high position among the rest of the chosen. Now, that is also similar to what Yahushua told his disciples, right? When they had asked what they were going to receive for forsaking the things of the world and following him, he told them that in the regeneration, for those that have followed him, when he comes back and he gets crowned and he gets his kingdom, they are also going to sit on 12 thrones judging the 12 tribes of Israel. So they would also be given a place, a high position. And a precept that goes with this as well is in the book of Revelation, the 3rd chapter. And we can start at verse 11. Behold, I come quickly. Hold that fast which thou hast, that no man take thy crown. And holding something fast means not like fast with speed, but fast as in when you fasten something, like when they say fasten your seatbelt, it means you lock it down. You hold it tight, you secure it. And that's what the Lord is saying. So what is it that we have that we're being told to hold fast? This knowledge, this truth, the ways of righteousness. And we're to hold on to that so that we don't lose it, because that is our ticket to getting that crown of being one of the elect, put it like that. Verse 12, him that overcometh will I make a pillar in the temple of my God, right? And another way of also saying he would be in a position to keep the courts, right? Or to judge in the Lord's house. And he shall go out no more, or he shall go no more out, and I will write upon him the name of my God, and the name of the city of my God, which is New Jerusalem, which cometh down out of heaven from God, and I will write upon him my new name. Okay, so there you go. Those that overcome, right, that follow the ways of righteousness would be rewarded as such. And then we get to the last 3 verses here, and in here it really mainly goes into it's a prophecy also of Yahushua coming on the scene, okay, and ultimately the Lord having mercy upon Israel and delivering us until we're in a state of peace. So Zechariah chapter 3 verse 8, hear now, O Joshua the high priest, thou and thy fellows that sit before thee, for they are men wondered at. Right? So Joshua, when we, like I said before, we read about the elders and those that were in this high position at this time, right? You had Joshua, you had the rest of the elders, the rest of the priests, you had Zerubbabel, and so on and so forth. And as it says, these are men wondered at, because these men were men, high in the spirit. And when we read, I believe it was Zechariah, the 1st chapter or the 2nd chapter, it was even mentioned about, or even I believe it might have been Haggai, the 2nd chapter. It was mentioned about the position of Zerubbabel and how he was a special and chosen vessel of the Lord as well. Okay, now what's also interesting about this verse here is when you read this verse in the NLT translation, it reads, listen to me, O Jeshua the high priest, and all you other priests, you are symbols of things to come. Okay, soon I am going to bring my servant the branch. And what I found pretty interesting about this is that yes, these things pertain to Joshua the high priest, right, as the individual, but when you look at it symbolically, right, as things to come, just as Joshua would be resisted by Satan and be clothed with filthy garments for a period in time, but at the end the Lord would have mercy upon him and take those filthy garments away from him and cleanse him and put on those righteous garments and set a fair mitre upon his head. For him being a branch plucked out of the fire, on a spiritual level, that is like the story or the process that the Lord is going through with his elect, right? For a period of time, you had really the whole nation, which even included the elect, clothed with that filthy garment, not knowing who we were, going off, living in, in iniquity in our sins. But the Lord had mercy, and starting with the elect, his chosen, he is removing those filthy garments from us and putting on us the clean and righteous garments. Hence, when you even look at the time that we're in today, a lot of Israelites who are the hopeful elect have left off the ways of the world and that wickedness, and have put on the righteousness, the mind of Yahushua, that we may, Lord willing, be delivered in these times to come. However, continuing in Zechariah chapter 3, verse 8, for behold, I will send forth my servant the branch. So this is a future event. And this servant, the branch that is referred to here, is talking about the Messiah, okay, Yahushua. Now, even the blue letter themselves, or the authors, or the scholars here, even they acknowledge that when you actually look into the word the branch or branch, okay, you have tazamach, and when you look at the third definition, it says sprout, shoot of Messiah from Davidic tree. Okay, and a precept for this as well is here in the book of Isaiah, the 11th chapter and the first verse, and it reads, and there shall come forth a rod out of the stem of Jesse. And this is speaking in the sense of like a family tree. And a branch, there goes that word again, shall grow. Now, a rod out of the stem of Jesse. We know that Jesse was the father of David, right? And so that stem, when you look at a tree, the stem of a tree, right? Look at a stem of a tree. Let's look at an image. Okay, so you can see the stem of the tree is pretty much this like middle part here. You have the roots, you have the stem, and then you have the branches. Okay, you have the branches that come out. So from the stem of the tree, right, as we're reading here in Isaiah 11, out of a rod shall come forth out of the stem of Jesse, so out of that line or that lineage, which who else was from the stem of Jesse? King David, right? And a branch shall grow out of his roots. And who is that branch? Yahushua. And when you continue to read in Isaiah the 11th chapter, you'll see that these traits here are describing Yahushua. So going back to Zechariah the 3rd chapter, that branch that would be sent forth as the servant is referring to the Messiah, to Yahushua. Verse 9, for behold, the stone that I have laid before Joshua, upon one stone shall be 7 eyes. Now this stone that is laid before Joshua is also representing Yahushua, as he is also known as the cornerstone, okay, or the foundation, right, that we build upon, that the church of the Lord is built upon. Okay, and even in, I believe, the book of Daniel, I forget if it's the 7th chapter or the 2nd chapter, but it describes the return of Yahushua as a stone. And I believe in the 2nd chapter, it also talks about that. The return of Yahushua is likened unto a stone that crushes the feet of that statue and so on. Okay, and so this stone here that is laid before Joshua is representing Yahushua as the foundation. And it says, as we're continuing to read, upon this stone, this one stone, shall be 7 eyes. Okay, now, depending on the precept, right, there are some precepts where you read it and the eyes, or like 7 eyes, for example, represents like complete, wisdom or understanding. But also when you go to the book of Revelation, let's go there real quick. Revelation, the 5th chapter. Yahushua is also mentioned here, right, as the Lamb, and he is likened on to having, Let's read it. Revelation chapter 5, verse 6. And I beheld, and lo, in the midst of the throne and of the four beasts. Now keep in mind, in Revelation, I believe starting from the 4th chapter onward, yes, the Apostle John is getting these visions. He is actually describing what he is seeing in the visions. So when he gets these visions and he sees what's going on in the heavens, and he says something like, I beheld, he's saying, this is what I saw in my vision of what I was shown. So what he saw was in the midst of the throne and of the four beasts, which when you read in the 4th chapter, that's where he first describes the four beasts that he saw, right? So he says, in the middle of all of this, and in the midst of the elders, stood a lamb as it had been slain. So what he saw was a lamb that looked like it had been slain, killed. But this lamb, as he's seeing, having 7 horns and 7 eyes. So the horns representing power and eyes representing that complete, wisdom, right? 7 being completion. That's what Yahushua had. But also, as we keep on reading, it tells you that these 7 eyes are also the 7 spirits of God sent forth into all the earth. Okay, so keeping that in mind, now let's go to the book of Revelation chapter 4. And I believe it's also in the 5th verse, right? Revelation chapter 4, verse 5. And it says here, and out of the throne proceeded lightnings and thunderings and voices. And there were 7 lamps of fire burning before the throne, which are the 7 spirits of God. So we read about the 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits, which are the 7 lamps. And now when we go to, lastly, let's go back to the book of Revelation, the 1st chapter. And if we come down here to maybe I'll just start at the 20th verse. It says here, the mystery of the 7 stars, which thou sawest in my right hand, and the 7 golden candlesticks. Now, a candlestick, at the top of the candlestick is what? Lamp or fire, right? So the 7 candlesticks or the stars or the spirits, they're all, synonymous. Okay, the candlesticks, as we're reading here, right? The 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches, and the 7 candlesticks which thou sawest are the seven churches. So these are all related, okay? And it's all in all to say those 7 churches, which represent the body, all right, of the elect. Now, back during this time of the Apostle John, you had Ephesus and Smyrna and all of the other 7 churches here. But guess what? The spirit of those churches are back here again on the earth. Okay? And it represents the elect, right? The body, of believers, the true worshipers of Yahweh Bahasham Yahweh Shai. And so relating that back to Zechariah, the 3rd chapter, what's being said here in the 9th verse is, the Lord has laid that foundation, which is Yahweh Shai, and upon Yahweh Shai, upon that foundation is the body, or really the building, the third temple, all right, which are those 7 eyes. Okay. And it continues, it says, behold, I will engrave the graving thereof, saith the Lord Yahweh of hosts, and I will remove the iniquity of that land in one day. And when you go into the word remove, here it means to cease. Okay, to almost like to erase or to undo it. And that's what the Lord is going to do, right? Because by laying Yahweh Shai as the foundation and us building on top of that, it's making way for Yahweh Shai to come back and fulfill that ultimate prophecy of delivering his elect, right? And completing that building. And in doing so, our iniquity is going to be erased, right? It's going to be done away with no more, because we're going to be changed and made perfect. And let's go into that word remove. We have here mawash, to depart, to remove, To remove, to depart. And in the Strong's definition, you have here to withdraw, right? The idea of receding by contact, cease, depart, go back, remove, or take away. And now if we get a quick precept, I believe this is in the book of Jeremiah 50 and 20. And it reads, in those days. Now, when you read some of these precepts and you hear things like, in that day, there shall come to pass, in those days, it's prophetic. Okay, and depending on the context as well, because sometimes you may read that and that prophecy has already been fulfilled. But when you're reading it and it's using this sort of language when it's describing the time period, it's mainly, most of the time, prophetic. So in those days and in that time, saith the Lord. How do you know what time that is? Well, read the verse, and the verse will tell you, well, based on what's going on or what's going to happen in that time, you can deduce that, okay, this has to be talking about the time of the kingdom, or the time of Jacob's trouble, or the time of the hour of temptation. But it's talking about sometime in the future. So in those days and in that time, saith the Lord, the iniquity of Israel shall be sought for, and there shall be none. And the sins of Judah, and they shall not be found, for I will pardon them whom I reserve. See? And we know that now we know this has to be in the future, really, when Yahushua comes back and delivers his elect and going forward into the kingdom, because right now that's not the case. You don't even need to search and you'll see Israel's iniquity all over the place. Trust and believe that, right? So we know this has not happened yet, but it's a precept to back up what we're reading of here in Zechariah, the 3rd chapter, about the iniquity being removed, okay, from the land. Finishing off in verse 10, in that day, there you go again, right? In that day. So in the day that the iniquity is removed, in that day, the same here as like in Jeremiah 50 and 20, right? In that day, saith the Lord of hosts, shall ye call every man his neighbor under the vine and under the fig tree. And this is just a metaphorical way of saying that in that time, we're going to be all, unified together, ultimately in peace. Because calling your neighbor under the vine and under the fig tree, like this is something that's done in a time of, peace, something harmonious. Okay. And so reading that in Zechariah 3 and 10 is to symbolize that point in time when all Israel comes together and we're delivered and we're at peace ultimately. And that brings us to the end of the book of Zechariah, the 3rd chapter. Lord willing, this was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Racha, Kodash. And until next time, Shalom.